Welcome to Dads with Startups, a podcast about a couple of entrepreneurs who put family first. I'm John, and Kevin is my co-host. Hey, Kevin.
Howdy. Nice to be here with you, John.
Thanks. So this is our first episode in a podcast where
Yeah,
our goal is to kind of talk about our business life and our journey, intermingled with family issues and what it's like to run a business and be a family person, right? And have kids and deal with
totally.
all the challenges there. So, yeah, maybe just for a little intro, I'm in a phone booth in my co-working space. So if I show the audience, we're also on YouTube. What do you see there, Kevin?
Looks like some nice desks, and you got the background. I like it. I like that place. What's it called, by the way?
It's the building is called Startup Ogden. It's kind of an initiative with the
Start
city.
Ogden.
Yeah, and they
Neat.
trying to generate more business culture here
Right.
where we are.
That's awesome.
I'm
And
based out of Utah. How about you, Kevin?
I'm based out of Phoenix, Arizona, and I am coming to you from a recently rented office space in kind of a little north of the center of sorry, center of Phoenix. And we just got everything painted in the office. You can see my wife, so my partner also just was working on that earlier this week, and we're hoping this works out. We are navigating a little bit of interesting neighbors and noises and stuff like that. So hopefully the recording will be nice and quiet for the time we're on air.
Yeah, I see a nice artificial plant hanging out behind
Yeah,
you, and a wall.
that's
The top half is white, bottom half is painted with a green strip.
yeah,
So with some,
yeah,
yeah, I'm in a phone booth thing. I think I kind of mentioned that, but it's a soundproof booth,
that's awesome.
so really good for calls like
I'm
this.
jealous of that.
So anyway, why don't we take this episode and tell each other our stories? You and I have kind of talked a little bit about this before, and we kind of know a little bit, but we're going to recap this for whatever minimal audience we have. So, yeah, Kevin, if you want to take some time and tell me about your journey as an entrepreneur, and you don't have to tell the whole story. Why don't you just at least start with the beginning? Go as far as you want.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to a podcast a few weeks ago, and it was in some sort of interview. I don't even remember who was being interviewed, but I just remember one thing they said was, "Well, I'm going to give you the simple version because if I were to give you the real life version, it would not be a good story." And I think that's true, right? So I always think about the American Civil War versus the British Civil War. Most people don't know the British Civil War. I mean, at least in the U.S., we don't really study it very much. But there was a British Civil War in the early 1700s, I think. And I think the reason that we don't hear much about it in history is because the story is such a mess. Like it's over 100 years, it's up and down. One you see like some sort of victory where the story should end, and then there's five more kind of iterations of it, and power is being grabbed by left and right. And by the end of the story, you're kind of back where it all started, and nothing really changed that much, or a few things changed, but is it just of a as a story, it would make a terrible movie, is my point. Whereas the American Civil War is pretty straightforward. There's the good, the good guys, the bad guys. We get rid of slavery. It's a straightforward story that actually people can like. Oh, let's make movies about this. And so that's kind of what I always think about is my life and my journey up to this would make a terrible movie if I were to tell everybody the actual pathways and all the different distractions of my life and how many failures here and there or projects I started that I never finished. So I'll just tell you that simple version. I was working in the corporate world for many years. I enjoyed my job, enough, but I really hated what I would say the Sunday night blues, which was I'd have a great time on the weekends hanging out with friends, and then Sunday around 4 or 5, I'd start to get a little down because I knew that I have to start heading to bed by 8 or 9 tonight to be able to, wake up for my job at a defense contractor tomorrow. I worked for the Boeing company for a while and a few other kind of educational tech companies. And I knew that I'd have to go to bed early, to get up early, and face, another week of this. And even though, I could get into it during the week and enjoy it, I just felt so, um, just is this my life or someone else's life I'm leading? And that was a big thing for me. Um,
What? Sorry, Kevin. What was your trade?
yeah,
What was your skill set?
I was a I graduated with like a degree in information systems in
Okay.
um, in 2008. So I was doing IT basically. And again, I there were fun times and there were just parts of it that were a drag. But either way, I think I always craved that freedom. I always craved being my own boss. I really hated one thing I remember really disliking were getting emails from my boss. And I had good bosses, so it wasn't like they were the problem. But I just did not like getting emails about like, what's going on with this? This person tells me they're having trouble with this, and everything was an emergency. And it was just this that feeling of like you wake up in the morning and you cringe as you look at your email because you're just worried you're going to get that boss email. And
Mhm.
so 10, 12 years, yeah, I guess 10 years later now, almost 10 years later, I've written that out of my life. In 2012, you know, my partner and I, we were married in 2012, and at about 6 months before we got married, our ceremony, I was reading the 4 Hour Work Week. I think a friend had given it to me, and he had told me about the plot of the book was basically something about like figure out a business by creating a fake business, t- put up ads for it, see which one works, and then make the business after you've tested the idea out. And I thought, as I listened to him, I thought that is so completely um, insidious and so unethical
Yeah.
that you would create a fake business, pretend like it exists, put up ads. I just could just hearing that just upset me. And I said that's not the way to do business. And I was very upset. So anyway, a year later, I finally get to reading the book because I didn't want to read it because of that. So I finally read the book, and I'm like, oh, okay, there's more to this story than that. And it's just opened the open for me this notion that you really could have some freedom and here's a different way of doing things. The other thing that it really did for me is it pointed out the time value of money,
Yeah.
which was a concept I really didn't get at the time. I was always focused when I worked for a company on who I could see in my world and who I could see were like my the director, the regional director, how much were they making? How much? And then when I went to a smaller company, how much was the CEO making? And having in IT, we had some people that had access to that, and they would kind of rumor to us how much people were making in the company. So I knew roughly what the CEO was making. And I said, that's the top of the hill. This is if I can just make that in life, this would be amazing. I'll succeed. And then realizing that to get that, what that CEO was doing, I remember like interacting with him because I was in IT, so I would help him here and there. His life was just completely a treadmill. I mean, he was just running from meeting to meeting all day, 12 hours a day, probably worked 60 to 80 hours a week, no problem. And when I read the 4 Hour Work Week, it kind of opened my eyes to, I'm going to make what, 200 grand, maybe 250, and work 80 hours a week. Is this really, how much am I really getting paid at the end of the day? And is this a good quality of life? Because the sort of the propaganda of the company, of all these kind of companies, is yes, that's who you want to become, is that you want to be that head honcho. And so it kind of made me question all of the things I had believed about money and about time and all this stuff, and really pointed out, oh, freedom, that's an interesting thing. So again, 2012, we both read it. We're both inspired by it, and we had planned to do our honeymoon before our wedding actually, and we go to Europe for some backpacking. And in my mind, that meant like a week or two. But my partner kind of came to me one day and was just like, no, I want to do 3 months. And I was like, 3 months? I'll have to quit my job. And she's like, yeah, quit your job. And so it kind of just forced me at that time to think about, oh, wow, this is really changing. Our lives are really changing. So I did quit my job in the spring of 2012. I had just gotten my refund from the IRS, which was about 10 grand. And on that money, we basically spent the next 3 months living in Europe. Spent about a month in Italy. No, about 2 months in Italy and about a month in Berlin. And we just lived on the cheap. We didn't really go. Basically we were not backpacking around. We were just in Rome and Berlin for the most of the time. Didn't really go anywhere. Lived on the outskirts in the outskirts of Rome in a little Craigslist kind of shared room or a private room that we had rented, and we lived as locals, and we had the most incredible time
I'm so
just
jealous.
experiencing, yeah, just experiencing the culture of what it means to be an Italian versus being a tourist of Italy.
Hmm.
And it really opened my eyes to like, wow, this is cool. We could we build a life like this? Could we build a business that allows us to have this kind of freedom? And so that was from that point is what we were working to achieve. And about 2 years later, yeah, about a year and a half, I'd say later, we finally hit something that had product market fit. And and then we've created other businesses from that success that iterated off of that. So without getting too much into all that stuff, I'd just say in general, my story is the story of somebody who desperately wanted to get that freedom and eventually found it. So I'd say that's kind of where I'm at now. I mean, in terms of how I might relate to people in this audience, I am a software developer. I'm working on a few, basically I'm working on a project right now that's a SaaS. It is in the online educational space. It's going to be a platform for teaching online courses. And we are about a year in now in terms of the development, and we're hopefully going to be launching soft launch in the next maybe month or two is what we're looking at. And so I'm actually starting to move one of my online courses that's on another system into it right now, and I'm actually this is where I'm starting to hit some roadblocks and some major bugs, and so we're kind of fixing that as we're trying to it's like fixing the plane while you're taking off. That's kind of
Yeah.
where I'm at right now.
Are you willing to share what this SaaS is, or are you going to wait until it launches to share
I'll
with us?
wait. I'll wait a little bit.
Yeah.
Not that I think it'll make a huge difference. I'm not particularly, I'd like to have this conversation with you eventually one day. Is I have had. I'll put it this way. There is a whole debate, I think, especially in the entrepreneurial scene, of does anybody care about your idea? Stop thinking that your idea is so great.
Mm,
Nobody cares. Don't worry about people copying. I used to be under that impression fully. I was like, I'm not going to be neurotic about this. NDAs, what a joke. And so for the most part, I do agree with that, except there's a few rotten apples out there. With our primary business, which is an online teaching, educational teaching course, basically, it's in the dental space. We were we were in a cool niche. We are in a cool niche there. We had our company completely copied by an acquaintance of my wife, who she had known for years. She had worked with him before. He literally copied our entire business model to the point of like all of his online products are basically just offshoots of ours, same price, same everything, all the way down the website. Thankfully, he's not as maybe talented in terms of design and stuff like that, but basically everything was copied to a pulp. And he cut off, I'd say the year he came online, we lost a good 40% of revenue
ooh, ouch.
over the next year and a half, I'd say, once he kind of came online. So it was a gradual, but it dipped because he actually had a pretty good reputation in his own beforehand. And so the
Mm,
moment he came online, it was like, all right, we're. we've really met our match now. Unfortunately, it happened because we were at a party with him, and my wife and I were talking to him, and we were excited to tell him what we were doing. We were like, "Hey, look what we're doing! We found this great
Yeah.
niche." So anyway, that's my story about being copied. So I'm a little more careful after that experience, just because I saw and had to undergo the financial hit, and it was not fun going down that dark hole.
Yeah. Well, was that the first thing that you guys kind of, you mentioned you've had product market fit with something. Was that the first thing that kind of caught on in the story you just told me?
No, it was probably the third for sure.
Oh,
And
okay.
so we started before I quit my job. I had been working on a project that this is the first project I worked on was some sort of like online directory. Um, and I think it was it was an online directory for coaches, for like people who are life coaches or something like that, let's say.
Yeah.
And I had really believed in this. I even had a partner. It was like I had a different partner at the time, which was my friend, and him and I were working on it and all this stuff, and it was going to be this big ordeal. And it's funny, it's like you look at your first. For me, I look at my first business venture, and it was like utter naivety, in every way, shape, and form. Like
Yeah.
I was doing everything wrong. I didn't know what about an MVP at the time, so I thought I was like, oh, let me build every single feature that could ever
Hmm.
could ever make anyone happy before I even start marketing. So that was my first one. The second one was sort of like an online hosting platform in a similar niche. That was for life coaches too, and that actually did better. I mean, the first company got zero revenue MRR. The second company, at its best, at its peak, was probably around 600 MRR. But it was like, okay, well, there's money coming in. I've got actual customers. Still a lot of naivety there, but and
MRR
not
is
a great.
monthly recurring revenue,
Thank you.
just in
Yeah, sorry.
case somebody, yeah.
Good call there. Yeah, so $600 a month. That's kind of where it was.
Hmm.
It peaked at that point and just completely plateaued. Like no matter what I did, it was like, nope,
Hmm.
I'm not moving. The hockey stick that they talk about never showed up. And this third one, because $600 wasn't going to cut it, it was almost like we saw the money running out to live. We had to survive.
Yeah.
My wife had to take a job because we were literally to the metal at one point. And she was graduated as a dentist and trained as a dentist, so she took a job as a dentist, which kept us afloat. And yet, $600 was not going to change much for us. So this third option was sort of not related to software. It was just something that we realized. Um, well, we had done some market. I will say there's something about doing market research. So I mentioned the 4-hour work week at the beginning, and the notion there is test ideas, see what people are trying, see what people are interested in before you start building a business. See if there's an actual um, an, so if there's a demand, let's say. And I had a friend that showed up kind of during this time, and I was just trying to make something work. Nothing was working. He showed up for a few weeks just to visit, and he same guy who told me about the 4-hour work week actually. He got us into this thing called the Market Samurai, I remember, or something like that. It was like a 30-day challenge where you were supposed to go find a new business. And um, I didn't believe it. I was very skeptical, but my wife is very open, thankfully. And we started doing this work where it's looking through keywords, looking through SEO. We're doing a lot of research basically, and we stumble on the fact that, oh, wait, there's something in the dental field that we know. Maybe we should explore that. And as we began to explore that and began writing blog articles, lo and behold, people started to contact us and was like, we really want help with this. And so basically, we built out an entire educational kind of consulting firm, agency, I guess you could say, or firm from that. And that's what hit. And from that, we created products and stuff like that. So that was the entrepreneurial beginning for us that actually did work
That's cool. So
after
that
many
third one,
iterations.
that gave you enough to support your family, pretty much.
Yes.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And you guys produce all the
Absolutely.
content too.
Yeah.
Produce the.
Yeah.
That's
So we
gnarly.
produced the content and we coupled it with some, some consulting stuff. And that is what led, again, that was became our bread and butter for a number of years. And that's what led us to be able to start other stuff. Eventually, I began selling some of the products, basically like for some of the online course um, uh, technology, we basically needed to build some stuff custom built for our WordPress online course system. That is what I turned into some products, and then I was able to create a little software business from that, which has grown and become another source of revenue. So I'd say for us, it's just been about like trying to generate multiple sources of income is sort of what's
Yeah.
worked for us. Not any one thing. We don't have, like I'd say right now we kind of have two or three, basically like two main sources of income and a third one that we're building up right now. And that's been really
Cool.
good in some ways because when one has gone down, the other was there to kind of keep us afloat. So,
Yeah. That's cool. Nice story.
and what
We
about
should
you?
probably.
I'd like to get into your story a little bit and hear kind of again, your simplified version. I'm sure it's not
Yeah.
as clean as it always
Simplified.
as it's
Yeah.
told.
Um, I like how we haven't really gone too much into detail on the progress behind a specific company, right? Like a SaaS,
Yeah.
and we can dive into that a little later, right? Future episodes and that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, I graduated in 2007 with an information systems degree, also
Nice. All right.
from Utah State University. And um, it's funny because when I graduated, um, everybody in my program was getting jobs that were basically the same kind of jobs computer science students were getting.
Ah.
And I I was like, I don't want to become a database administrator. There weren't as many like coding jobs as mostly like system admin type of jobs, and I was like, nothing about that sounds fun to me, I like to create. I kind of have an artistic streak, and um, I didn't like that. And um, when we had group projects in college, I was always the one to work more on the interface, and I was often the one or one of the ones to do more of the presentation as a people person, and so we'd have like our assigned team, and you'd have like the guy who's like, I don't want to talk to anybody, just I'm just gonna go home and program this out, and he's like a genius, and I would come in and I'd be like, I don't know what I'm doing programming. I'm just gonna like run everything else. Um, and I mean, I did learn. I mean, if we rewind all the way, my first I learned how to build websites in HTML when I was like 17, you know,
What year is
probably
this?
98, maybe 99
Yeah.
or
Okay. So
so.
that's about the same time I was learning that stuff. Interesting.
Yeah. And it was all table based, web
Yeah.
pages and all these like spinning GIFs or GIFs, whatever your word you want to use. And I played tennis growing up. And so I built this web page that had that just like it was a web page about, say, Andre Agassi, right? Um, and it just like had some pictures. And back then, the internet was a wild, wild west. So you just pulled whatever copyrighted pictures off and put it on your own page.
Right.
That's how it worked. So I had pictures. It was hosted on GeoCities, on a free website on GeoCities, and and then I figured out click like banner ads, and
Hmm.
you could put banner ads on your site. Um, and there was this one company that would pay 5 cents per click, which is
Hmm.
this crazy number, like compared to today. um, so I put these banner ads up, and during the summer months, during like the peak professional tennis season, um, I raked in about 150 bucks a month from
Oh, that's
banner
awesome.
ads. And I had this web page about Anna Kournikova. They were clean pictures, don't but That one was highly popular,
Sure.
um, and that one, yeah, if you search for her name on Excite, which is pre-Google, one of the top
Mm-hmm.
search engines, um, my site came up, like my webpage came up as the number one search result, and it generated
Wow.
150 bucks a month. Um, and as a teenager, I was like, I have it made. Like my work is
That's a
done.
lot
You
of
know, it's
traffic
just
because 5 cents a click. Yeah, that's a lot of traffic there.
yeah, it's just passive income. And I was like, this is awesome. You know, and so I had money to go on dates and that kind of thing. Um, well, then I if I could time travel, I would go back and kick myself in the butt and be like, you need to
Yeah.
just go around to businesses and say, hey, I'll build this site for you. You know,
Mm.
I mean, think about the kind of money I could have made if I did that instead of tried to make $150 a month building, sites with ads on it. And that would have been that probably would have put me on an earlier trajectory to where I am today as an entrepreneur. But anyway, fast forward. So I graduated from college 2008 or 2007. I wasn't happy with those computer science jobs, and so I enrolled in a master's program, um, and it was in a master's of instructional technology and learning science is the technical term. All about creating coursework and curriculum. And if you're a tools guy like I was, like I could create the tools to build these courses, that was highly valuable in that space as well. Um, so I got a degree with that because I wanted to work more with people, but I also did want to use some programming skills and that kind of thing.
Now, were you
Before,
involved in the educational space at this time in any way?
not really. I mean, my dad is a teacher, high
Okay.
school teacher, but
And were the people that you went to, like in your cohort, were they? My impression, because I looked into this degree at the time, I ended up going, my master's was in information systems, but I actually was very close to doing that exact degree. And I remember one of the reasons is I thought, oh, okay, well, everyone's going to be a teacher and I'm going to be the only one not. But maybe I was wrong about that assumption. Probably was.
Um, yeah, the degree was in the College of Education, so it wasn't educational. I mean, mine was a Master's of Science, but people didn't really. Teachers would get that master's just for extra credit and
Okay.
higher salaries, but most people who graduated there, they either became instructional designers. So I knew some people who went to work for like Intuit to help put together training material, or the government military to put together training material for personnel. Um, yeah, that kind of like corporate training
Nice.
route. They either do that or they go on and become professors and teach in the same
Mm.
field,
Oh,
basically.
I see.
Um,
Gotcha. That's cool.
and I was able to craft a degree that was a little customized to things that I wanted. So I mixed in a lot of like human computer interaction type of courses and graphic design and things that visually help people learn. Um, but the funny thing is, by the time I graduated with that degree in 2009, the market had bombed. There weren't nearly as many jobs out there. And I had already started doing some freelance work while I was in grad school. And I had video production experience, making videos. Like I made a bunch for fun with friends in high school, and that talent just kind of carried through. And so um, I started making videos mostly for the university. I made a bunch of and you know recruitment and admissions videos and that kind of thing for them. And then I made a few other videos for some companies, local companies. Um, I actually I made the first video I was hired to make. I borrowed a video camera, like a professional video camera, made it, and then I took that money and bought my own camera. Um, and that was kind of the first taste of freelance, which is a little bit similar to entrepreneurship. I mean, you're
Yes,
your own
definitely.
boss. The way I see entrepreneurship is a little bit more of you're building a company, and as a freelancer, it's not necessarily company building. It's mostly,
Right.
you work for you have lots of bosses. um, and so, but then
But you're
people started,
halfway there. I mean, I think that's much different than working for a company per se or in a corporate
yeah,
gig. I mean, that's you're kind of like already getting the hang of it and understanding your own like you run your own ship basically.
Yeah. And you start to become comfortable with the risk involved in being an entrepreneur, you know. Um, but yeah, so people started to find out I knew how to build websites, and so then everybody was like, "Hey, we need a website built, and we need that more than the video, so we're going to have you do that for us."
Ah.
And then more, I eventually, after a few years, I was just programming. I wasn't even doing videos much anymore. Um, because that's what people needed, and I enjoyed it. And so at the end of the day, I end up having the same job a lot of computer science majors end up having, you know?
What was
Um,
your chosen platforms or tools that you like to build in, and what kind of
um,
particular clients did you like to work with?
yeah, I was well connected with the university at the time, so I did work on lot of university projects which were built in Cold Fusion, which is a language I'd never recommend to anybody. Um, but I became pretty proficient at that. I did build a lot with PHP. I worked a lot with WordPress as well, building, mostly custom themes that go on top of WordPress, that hook into a
Yeah.
lot of stuff there. Um, and yeah, back then that's mostly what I worked in was either
Hmm.
PHP or Cold Fusion. Um, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. And when I graduated with my master's, I didn't actually look for any jobs because I really
Hmm.
enjoyed what I was doing. I really enjoyed doing different tasks, It was kind of like from week to week, I almost didn't really know exactly what I was going to work on, or it could be different. And usually I was juggling 3 or 4 projects at a time, and so I could kind of switch between them. Um, and I realized that I get really bored of just doing the same thing, and that's what scared me about the computer science jobs. A database or system admin, that kind of thing just still sounds terrible to me. Um, and working at a large corporation where you might have this one project and only work on it and maintain a code base, that also doesn't sound super fun. And after a couple years, I did interview for some jobs in my field in instructional design, and I would get on an interview with them, um, usually phone interview. And at the end of the interview, I'd be like, that doesn't sound any more fun than what I'm doing right now. Um, and yeah, they might have paid a little more, um, but I think I valued the experience more than the compensation, you
Right.
know. So the hard thing was over time, I would see friends of mine working for tech companies, and this is definitely the SaaS boom, right? Was between 2008 or 9 to current. All these
Yeah.
tech companies, a whole bunch in the Salt Lake City area, um, are just exploding as well. A lot of other areas in the country. And so I had a lot of friends that ended up working for those companies and moving up the chain of command, if you will.
Right.
And I was like, I'm a freelancer. As a freelancer in this geographical area, there's kind of a cap to how much you can charge per hour,
Yeah.
and I'd met that cap, and um, it was sort of like what you were talking about with hourly. I mean, the time value of money. Um, I was limited to how many hours per week I was willing to work as far as income
Right.
goes,
And had you
and
started your family at this point with your children yet and stuff? You'd had your children at this point, or are you
yeah,
still, this is pre kid?
yep. We got married a couple years or a year after I graduated grad school and had a kid a couple years after that. Um, and I was freelancing this whole time.
Gotcha.
By then I was kind of full steam, full time. And when I say full time in the freelance world, that was usually 30 to 35 hours a week.
Yeah.
And so the work-life balance is really good, you know.
Yeah. But
Um,
as I mean, you guys, uh, as we'll come to find out, you have 4 kids now. So
yeah,
as more kids are coming online, as those of us know who have kids, the demands of life get more complex, and also the financial demands go up. And so I can
yeah,
see if your friends are working and they're moving up the ladder, they're making more money and all that stuff. That's kind of matching their family trajectory of growth. And then you're kind of at this one level that's got to be a bit frustrating.
Yeah, and it was still going up a little bit, but there was definitely limitations that I could see. And
Right.
if I think about like, okay, what's going to happen when I'm 50? Am I still going to be this freelancer looking for jobs to do these custom coding jobs? And what kind of biases are people going to apply to me as a 50-year-old freelancer, you know?
Which you
So
see, yeah, I mean, I go
yeah,
to WordPress meetups fairly often, and I see that kind of stuff. And you also see that as a 50-year-old, it's just not enjoyable, right? Like there's got to be you want to have built something that it has its own momentum, right?
yeah. And so I knew that something had to change, but I also, the thought of working for the man, no matter who that was, I definitely had settled into an unemployable state, you know. Um, so the story goes, after doing probably about, you know, I'm trying to think of how many years of freelancing total that was. Um, I probably about 6 full-time years of freelancing. Somebody approached me and they wanted a custom job built in the government space. And I feel comfortable at just saying the software that I maintain now is a permitting and licensing platform for local governments. And so this one entity, this one municipality asked me to build a custom built solution for them. And I was like, this was oh gosh, how many years ago? 8 years ago. Um, and so I built it for them. And then another couple of years ago, another entity reached out to me, another municipal government, and they were like, we heard what you built for them. We want that, except
Ah,
with this and this and that." And so I was like, all right. So I rebuilt the whole platform, which was really nice to be able to reiterate or have another iteration of the product. And at this point, I was like, huh, maybe I should
were you able to
talk to.
use any of your old code, by the way?
Um, I completely changed the framework. It was both were written in as with a PHP in PHP with this MVC framework, and um, I I it was completely different. So, um, but there was a little bit of reuse as far as concepts go, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so then there was a third time around in 2007, end of 2017, that I was asked to build the product again with like, and they
Wow.
were like, we want like these guys have, but with this and this and that. And I started to realize this is like, I could just build this with these knobs just to flip on and off, and it would work for all three of these different use cases. And so that's I kind of worked a deal with them where I did it at a discount in exchange for ownership of the code, and then I
Nice.
I basically spun off my business, which is called Civic Review, um, which is now a SaaS product which I maintain. So I could talk more about that journey at another time as well, next time maybe. But yeah, that's my background. So
Nice.
I think launching the what when I started building Civic Review, it was sort of like a side project. And a lot of times when people say side project, usually that implies you have a full-time job and then you just work nights and weekends on this side project. Well, as a freelancer, you can make your own hours and work on whatever you want. So my side
Right.
project involved dialing down my freelance hours and ramping up my Civic Review hours, and that's kind of how I did it. It removed a whole lot of risk and allowed me to progress pretty fast as far as building it, um, which is really advantageous. So I was really lucky to be in that spot. I know most people who want to start their own business, it's a scary concept, like you said, to just quit your job. Um, and I luckily had a consulting job where I could just dial it down and it wouldn't really make anybody mad. I just would have to turn down more jobs than I used to do. Um, and even going into freelancing, that's another thing a lot of people aspire. When I was a freelancer, people would be like, "That's so awesome! That's the dream!" You know, you can just sit on the beach all the time and work in your swimsuit, on a laptop. And of course, that's not how it works. Not if you want to actually support a family, you got to like dedicate work hours. I pretty much had
Yes.
regular office hours, but I started when I was in college. I was single. Rent was 175 a month for me, and it was like I didn't have to make that much money, so I just kind of eased into the freelancing. So there
That's
was a lot
cool.
of luck, situational luck involved in my story.
I think so. I mean, I can definitely see a lot of parallels. I mean, I also began freelance work in college, doing websites as well. I remember I started with Joomla back in the day, and it was like
Oh yeah,
getting my
I
head
used that.
wrapped around Joomla was so difficult. It was like the most difficult thing I ever learned. It was like going from a static page, HTML, to like, what is this? What is this system? And I remember trying to like figure out how to style it, and it was like, where is the style sheet? I don't understand this thing. It's funny how it's like it's
Mhm.
now a no-brainer, but it's these things at
Yeah.
the time were a big leap for me. But I think for me the issue is I never valued my time very much during those days, and so I would completely discount my time, and I would do these websites for people that I knew and charge pennies for it, and
Yeah.
then be bitter and angry about the experience and feel underpaid and say I'm never going to do that again. And so instead of it being something that maybe would have helped me leap from a freelancer to more maybe someone more of a product person like yourself, I had this attitude towards freelance of just never again, I'll just go get a job instead. At least they pay me. So
Yeah.
that was I think my mistake is that it sounds like you understood early on how to charge well enough to feel like this is worth your time because you were able to do it for so long.
Yeah. I think the way I looked at it when I was in college, somebody would ask me for a job and I would calculate the time it would take and then just multiply that by whatever hourly rate I was making at my current job. And college was in this little town in northern Utah called Logan, and wages are low up there, and because competition is high for jobs among college students, and so
Yeah.
I, I mean, I would be like $10 an hour, sure. I think my
Right.
first one is actually 15 bucks an hour for a custom designed built website, which is just a total. I would never trust somebody who offered
Yes.
me that low of a price.
Right.
So, and then pretty like, I just kind of ramped it up each time. I just kind of upped it a little bit, and until I felt like, okay, this, given my experience level, this is where I'm going to sit at for a while, and I just kind of slowly upped it over time. But it was, yeah, it was. I
That's
remember the
cool.
first summer that I decided before my last year of college, I was like, because I usually would go find full-time employment for the summer. But this summer I was like, you know what? I'm not going to go get a job this summer. I'm just going to do freelance. And that was highly liberating. Um, and my financial commitment was very low. Without having a family or anything still, you don't have to earn that much money. I lived
Yeah,
with four
exactly.
roommates and I was working from home, and my roommates would be like, hey, let's go to the lake. And I'd be like, count me in, and just like shut it down
Yeah,
and
nice.
go out to the lake. And um, but it was really good. I think that's what gave me the confidence, like, oh, I can just do this. So,
Right. Well, it is about confidence, and I think what's cool is that I wish I had been a lot more naturally confident. I think it took, this is where it'll be interesting to chat about some of this stuff down the road, but it took me a lot of self kind of exploration, and I still go through it to get to the point where thought I was any kind of value for my time. And even though I was very talented and people told me I was, it was like, no, I'm not enough. And so going to a job was a safe place. It was a place where it was protected. It was steady. There was a
yeah.
steady paycheck. All these comforts. And I remember I had a friend of mine who I had told. I remember this must have been 2009 or something. And I said, I really would love to start my own business. And that didn't mean to me become a product. The idea of starting a startup was just never. That's never going to happen. The best I will be able to do is maybe be a freelancer. But that seemed so like a million miles away even itself. And I remember he said to me, he similar to me had um, was in a job and was always happy with the job, the safety of a job. And he said, my father struggled for years just to get a job. Once I get a good job, I'm not going to let go. I don't think you should go down that road. It's very risky. Um, and I just thought, oh, maybe he's right. Like maybe that's crazy to think that I could do my own freelancing. So I think the people around me too is, and for those who are listening, I think the people around us really do have that influence. It wasn't until I met my wife, who had done more impressive things than me, and said, "Yeah, we could do this," that I was just like, "Oh, okay, I guess we can do this."
Yeah.
And so sometimes it does take someone in your life like that to shift your perspective, shift that paradigm. What do you think it was for you that, if there was anything, did you have parents that were entrepreneurial? Did you have family
Oh no.
or
Yeah.
members that gave you any kind of model for that, or how did you even
Um, the
think that you
probably the
could do
most
this?
successful business person in my family was my grandpa, who inherited a business from his dad. But when my
Okay,
grandpa was running it, things just really took off, and it did really well.
nice.
He was very wealthy because of it, and we were blessed to have a lot of places to visit him at. You know, a beach house in Florida and a cabin in up by
Right.
Yellowstone, and some really cool things to do. Um, but his world was patents. It was like agricultural
Mm,
technology, you
gotcha.
know, and machinery and stuff. And so his thing was always patents. He's always telling me I should patent all my code, and I was like, I think
Yeah,
he's a little disconnected from the code world. But um, for me,
understandably.
yeah, and my parents were, um, my mom kind of worked part time usually. My dad was a teacher, and a teacher job is like pretty standard. Got your
Yeah, yeah.
401k pension or whatever, and there wasn't a lot of. He did some stuff during the summer breaks. He did some tennis workshops and stuff, so he kind of kept himself busy doing other things. But I think so. I was doing the freelancing. I got a desk here in this co-working space. So if any of you are watching on YouTube, just these desks sitting next to brick walls in this space called Startup Ogden, and um, it was a really cheap desk. And I because that's when my second kid came along, and I thought I think I need to get out of the house. You know, my oldest kid was old enough to start opening the door and stuff like that, and um, so I started coming here for work. Um, and there were a bunch of other little businesses who were only a couple years old, and they were all doing different things. And um, that really inspired me, you know. And I was like, oh,
Nice.
I need to come up with something. So that kind of kicked me into the startup world a little bit, was being just rubbing, like you said, having people that influenced me. And so I
Yeah.
wholly attribute that change of attitude for me, and because for years before that I had been building this permitting platform custom job over and over again. You know, it's like, John, when are you going to turn this into a business? You
Wow.
know, and I think
Right.
it was when I was here I was like, now's the time, you know. And so
Yeah.
yeah,
So
it's a
there's a
big
bit of
influence.
serendipity too, because it's almost like maybe in both cases, you and I, the businesses that took off for us, or I should say the projects that took off for us, were ones that necessarily maybe we wouldn't have thought of out of college. So this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to do an online permit platform 10 years from now. That's not probably what was in your mind.
Oh yeah.
And in
No.
my mind, dentistry was a million miles away. Um, and yet these things sort of find us in some ways. We find ourselves involved in them. And if we're smart
Yeah.
enough, we say, there's something here. Maybe I should look further. And so it's not, I think that's the thing is that you look at a lot of these stories of entrepreneurs and it's like, whether it's Mark Zuckerberg or whatever, it's like it's very clear, like, yeah, there's always a bit of serendipity, but you can see maybe I want to become an entrepreneur, or I want to let's start a company, and sometimes it has to find you, and you don't even know what kind of area of value you'll be bringing to the world. I mean, this is
Yeah.
a very cool niche that you're in.
Yeah. You too. All right, I think we should probably wrap it up, and we can talk
Yeah,
a little bit more about everything next time. So why don't you wrap us up, Kevin?
cool. All right. Well, thanks for joining, everyone. If you are an entrepreneur with kids, with a family, I hope that you found this at least intriguing. I think we're going to get into those topics more as we go and pull in some of the dynamics of what it means to be an entrepreneur with a family and putting family first. So, if you're interested in this topic, please make sure to subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to our channel and if you will, give it a like. That would really help. And then, if you're listening to this, if you found us through your like podcasting platform, we would love if you would leave us a review. If you're an Apple user, use iTunes or Apple Podcasts now it is. And if you are an Android user, whatever your podcasting app of choice is, I like Podcast Addict is mine actually. Leave us a review. We'd love to get your thoughts and feedback on that, and also just helps people find the show. So you can also find more show notes and the description and all that stuff at dadswithstartups.com. So check it out.
All right, see ya.
All right.